Hello friends, I am absolutely thrilled to be here sharing the screen with Gunther today. In this session, we are diving into some burning questions that many Scrum Masters and Agile coaches are eager to get answer to. And who better than Gunther to guide us? While Gunther probably does not need an introduction, let's go through the formality, shall we? So, Gunther, a seasoned Scrum practitioner with journey that begins in 2003 when he first embraced Scrum. Throughout his career, Gunther has made significant contributions to the world of Agile and Scrum. He is the author of various books on Scrum, including Scrum A Pocket Guide, which I am sure is kind of Bible to all Scrum Masters out there. He co-created important frameworks like Agility Path, Evidence-Based Management, and the Nexus Framework for Scale Professional Scrum. With this, let's give a warm welcome to Gunther. Gunther, over to you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for the very enthusiastic introduction, Sunand, and thank you for having me on your channel. It's an honor, and it's amazing how many people you reach out to via your channel. Cool.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Gunther. So, Gunther, all these questions which I have going to ask you are shared by our WhatsApp group members on from various LinkedIn, messages, and from, of course, from our channel CareersTalk. So, if you allow, shall we start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, very first thing is with respect to your title, this Scrum Caretaker. So, what does this title means to you, and what are your goals in this role as a Scrum Caretaker? Gunther.
Yeah, well, what I hope it reflects, calling myself a Scrum Caretaker, is I hope it reflects that I care about Scrum because it's a Scrum Caretaker. But I also hope that the word caretaker reflects that I care about people and the human, in that sense, the human aspect of Scrum. So, and it was at a strange time, back in 2016, when I went completely independent, because the years before I had been working together with Ken Schwaber and Scrum Talk and creating some of the frameworks that you named in your kind introduction. And I had to sort of think of a title for myself, because sometimes this is a CareersTalk channel, so it's funny because LinkedIn and so on, they all invite you to create a title. And I felt like not calling myself some sort of traditional title, but I'm just a one-person company. It would be strange to call myself the CEO of my own and myself and my own company. It's just strange because I do sort of everything. I'm a really do-it-yourself guy. So I decided to pick a name that I hope reflects what is me, what I am, maybe to the world, what I'm hoping to achieve. And now later on, I added to that, talking about what you hope to achieve, because it sort of reflects what I am, how I feel that I am. And I also added independent to that. So I call myself an independent Scrum Caretaker. And later on, I added to that to clarify what I believe in, what is sort of my purpose in life on this planet. As I call it, on a journey of humanizing the workplace with Scrum. Make it sort of very explicit, because I think we've got a lot of work to do in restoring the balance between the process aspect of Scrum and the people aspect of Scrum. Because the process aspect is being embraced in many places across the world. The empiricists, so organizing work in short cycles that we call sprints. But that self-organizing aspect of Scrum, that is still being ignored way too much. And that self-organization for me is a sign of humanizing the workplace, or rehumanizing workplace, meaning accepting, embracing, acknowledging that we all are human beings and that we all are capable of organizing our own work within the boundaries of Scrum. And in that sense, it's sort of a movement against the mechanization of the workplace, in which people are treated as resources, pieces of a machine, mechanical devices, whatever, robots, whatever, programmable things, but not human beings. So that's where my name comes from.
Great. I think you have touched this wonderful thing. And for my key takeaway is that being human is important before you are thinking about being agile, I think. So I think that's something which I mean, I've just coined this term that being human is important
Yeah,
before you think about being agile. So I think
yeah.
that's really wonderful. Thanks.
Or
Thanks.
at least they should go hand in hand.
Yes, yes,
You
absolutely.
can't have the one without the other in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay. So let's move on. Uh, Now this question is again asked by a lot of my, group members and lot of Scrum Master, that what is your perspective on the future of Agile and Scrum? I'm like, you have like one of the early adopter of Scrum Agile. It's like more than 2-3 decades now for you. But if you have seen in the recent times, for example, this Capital One, there's a big giant company, so they have completely disbanded their Agile division. So what do you,
Yeah.
according to you, what is your perspective on this?
Well, too many perspectives to share in a very short time span. Actually, what it in a way always reminds me of. First of all, let's start with Agile and Scrum. What is so funny, just looking back at my own career, if you want to call it like that. So, like you said in your introduction, Sunant, I started with Scrum back in 2003. About this time of the year, by the way, we're now October 2023. So in October 2003, I was in a first iteration with a new team. We were all new to it. And I call it an iteration because we weren't like sort of officially doing Scrum, which is fascinating. We did something that is called extreme programming. XP, yeah?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was September 2003 that we thought about doing it, and then by the beginning of October we got started. And up to 2010, 2011,
Hmm?
that means for 7, 8 years, I never even used the term agile. It was all about Scrum, although back in 2003 we signed the Agile Manifesto and so on. But it was, in a way, it was all about what we were doing Scrum, and by preference combined with something like extreme programming. So I never used the term Agile. I never called myself Agile. I never called myself an Agile coach, but always something with Scrum. And it was only in about 2011 when I started working with a lot of large organizations, mostly in the Netherlands, where you're based in too. That suddenly this word agile became so important and almost be dominant in everything that we did. So in that sense, I had to almost think about it. And that was sort of a sign that it was sort of the time of a new hype in a way, because up to that time, I was always focusing on Scrum. Now I kept doing that, and I'm maybe because of my age, look at my beard and the time that I've been doing this, I still don't focus too much on this agile aspect. Why? Because Scrum is tangible. It is actionable. It's something that I can get across. I always focus on the purpose of the things that we have in Scrum, the things that we have defined in Scrum. Why do we have it like this? What are we trying to avoid? What are we trying to overcome by doing it like this? So more about the purpose of Scrum than just the formal rules. And then what I saw happening in the Netherlands, so let me take that as an example, and maybe that is something that after a while also happened with the example of capital that you've shared.
Yeah, yeah.
What I saw happening in the Netherlands, I consider the Netherlands as a sort of forerunner country in terms of Scrum and this agile way of working. In that sense, we saw a boom 2011, 2012, a boom, large organizations, certainly in the financial world, but also in other companies. So ING, other banks, Philips looking at things. And I've been in a fortunate position to be able to work with all of them, including sometimes executive management. And then suddenly they all wanted to go for agile. And I remember my first 2 years of working with ING, it wasn't even about agile, it was just Scrum. We're doing Scrum in one of the largest IT departments of the organization, 800 people. And in 2 years' time, we went from zero delivery with Scrum to 100% delivery with Scrum. But then things got confusing and all terms and so on. And what happened in the Netherlands, suddenly, as there was this boom of Scrum in a way, actually, suddenly you saw all these agile coaches popping up everywhere. And I think a lot of them just wanted to benefit from the
Yeah.
increased demand for that. And then you run into people that have like heard about it, maybe touched a book about it or read an article about it, and then quickly call themselves agile coach. And honestly, Sunand, a lot of them just got away with it because companies had no idea what they meant with agile, and they just, the money was there and there were opportunities or whatever. And then it went down again in the Netherlands, certainly. And I think one of the things that happened at Capital, I believe, is that sort of hype being over that was also happening in other countries across the world. And that's one of the things. And why is it in a way sad? Not just because, but that is sad because all those people get laid off. But in a way, it has for me two main reasons. First of all, organizations have no idea what they expect from it. They all just want to be agile.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the discipline and the hard work, a lot of them are already giving up in a way. But I think a lot of people calling themselves agile coach also call this upon themselves. Because I still have no idea about, let's say, a sort of definition of what is an agile coach.
Okay.
I never get a clear answer on that. That means they also are not able to express towards organizations what is it that they bring? What are the ideas? What is the vision? What is the added value? What do they bring to organizations? So those two factors have, in my view, reinforced each other. Companies not really sure what they know. And then agile coaches also not being able to offer full transparency over what it is that they bring. So in the meanwhile, I'm just sticking to Scrum because for me that is clear. When I get asked to work with an organization, by the way, which doesn't happen too often, but sometimes people ask for my help, I always look at it has to be about me in the first place. So I don't participate in open bids and whatever processes and so on. I have to feel that they're really serious about it. So I have to feel that there's some sort of urgency, which often is reflecting the idea that management is also buying in whatever is going to happen. And it has to be about Scrum. Maybe it's because it's the only thing I know, but for me, Scrum is a very tangible, actionable thing, and that is for me very, very transparent. And then you've got all those people say, yeah, but Scrum, that seems like a limitation. And honestly, for me, it's not. It's even the contrary, because Scrum for me is an open framework. It's literally a framework. Scrum helps to establish a frame within organizations, but within the frame, there are a myriad of opportunities. There are gigantic opportunities and options to do it differently based on context. So the fact that Scrum has a clear definition is for me a good thing, and it doesn't limit options. So I'm sticking to Scrum, but I feel also that a lot of people are starting to wonder, like your question indicates, about the future of Scrum. And it's something that I would like to translate into questions about the relevance of Scrum in the future. I am sure that Scrum has a future, but you know what? Over those past 10, 15, 20, 25 years, in a way, we have massively replaced the waterfall process with often Scrum, because organizations around the world have adopted Scrum. Now, I'm not always too impressed with what they do about Scrum, what they understand with Scrum, and therefore the limited benefits they get from adopting Scrum. So I do sense that sort of an urgency for practitioners like you, me, and all those people around the world to keep Scrum relevant, which is something that I've called over the past couple of years since I wrote a paper back in 2020, in April 2020, which was the first lockdown wave of the Corona crisis, if you would remember. And I called it moving Scrum downfield, or moving your Scrum downfield. So I think as Scrum practitioners across the world, we have to start working hard. We have to challenge the current status quo of this massive adoption of Scrum, which is maybe not too sophisticated, not too subtle, and so on, and move that forward. Okay. So that is, I think Scrum will be needed and is still relevant, but it's not, in a way, not going to happen by itself. We have to do that as practitioners across the world. Keep challenging the status quo in organizations that have adopted Scrum, challenge what they've done, and bring in ideas on how they can get more from their Scrum.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Gunther, for that elaborated answer. I really love it, your perception and your with the respect to future of Agile and Scrum. With this, I have one more follow-up question, and again, I think this question is somewhere connected. That giving this evolving perception of Scrum Master in some organization. So, how do you view the changing role of Scrum Master and the trend of asking them to take a dual role? So nowadays, few of the organization ask them to perform a role of, for example, business analyst or a project manager or Scrum Master or
Yeah.
sometimes developer and Scrum Masters. So, what is your view on that kind of things? Because I think organization now don't want to spend much, time and cost on this kind of roles. So,
Yeah.
a few people, I mean, they ask me, a lot of time that okay, so now this is what happening in our organization, and we cannot relocate, and we don't have any other option because at the end of the day, I have my family to feed on, right? And
Yeah.
so, but
Of
what is
course.
your take on that? Like, I mean, those people are stuck. They really want to do something, but yeah, I mean, due to
Yeah.
various restrictions, they are not able to do that.
Yeah. Well, it is part of what I believe is needed to start moving Scrum downfield is getting organizations to leave behind that sort of industrial thinking. You refer to my book, Scrum a Pocket Guide, so I call it the industrial paradigm and moving into the agile paradigm. Now, a lot of organizations are still stuck in this industrial way of thinking, but within that thinking, they want to introduce Scrum, which upfront limits what you will get out of Scrum. I think our role as Scrum Masters, and in a way, potentially everyone involved in Scrum, but certainly Scrum Masters, is to help organizations use Scrum to transcend that industrial thinking and move into that agile thinking, that agile era, or that moving towards that agile paradigm. And how is that often reflected in how people look at the Scrum Master role? The fact that they're still stuck in industrial thinking because they think in terms of what does the Scrum Master do? What are the tasks? What are the activities? In that sense, often a reflection of what we call utilization thinking. Utilization means being busy and explain what you do and how many hours you spend on what sort of task or activity on every day and every week and so on. So if organizations look at Scrum Masters from that perspective, they're missing two very important points. First of all, it's not about being busy, it's about bringing value. And the value that the Scrum Master brings is to make sure that the organization, but also the team within the organization, understands Scrum and gets the most out of it. I often compare it, and that is connected to where we got the name Scrum from, that old paper, 1986, the new product development game, where we get the name Scrum from. Well, the Scrum Master for me is like that coach of a sports team on the sideline watching the team play. The coach can't intervene. He or she can't run onto the field and take over the ball and do it himself. No, I know some coaches shout, otherwise other ones are really relaxed. But essentially they will observe what the team is doing, what they do, how they behave, and so on. And in between the games, at a break and so on, they will bring in the observations, they will ask questions, they will help them think about tactics and strategies on how to perform better. So it's an essential role, but the impact that a Scrum Master has is largely indirect. And if organizations just focus on one person being the Scrum Master in terms of utilization, what are you doing? I don't know, timesheets, reporting, whatever, they miss that point of that essence of the role of the Scrum Master. Plus, and that is the second thing that they miss out on the fact that in Scrum, the unit for me to work with is a Scrum team and not individuals within the Scrum team. It's about what the Scrum team does and not in terms of tasks and estimates and so on, what the Scrum team does in terms of a sprint. And what a Scrum team does in terms of a sprint, so time is a sprint, not task estimates or individual things. It's not about individuals. Plus, it's not about, in that sense, industrial thinking volume. It's not about how much they have done. It's about what have they done, and is this the most important, potentially valuable stuff that we needed right now? So that means organizations that look at the Scrum Master from what you just described, which is, by the way, happening in a lot of places, and I
Yeah.
agree, is that they have missed moving from looking at individuals within the team, moving towards a Scrum team, of which a Scrum Master is part, a sprint and value. And that is needed to be challenged. We have to challenge that. We have to, as Scrum Masters, we have to help people shift from the one to the other. But often, if the Scrum Master is not accepted, acknowledged for that challenger of the status quo, that is difficult, because that's the essence. So it's not, but it's often for me, for Scrum Master, not just to sit around and wait to be acknowledged.
True.
Get yourself acknowledged, claim your role. And that is tied into a sort of side effect of, or a side thing of this, is that way too many Scrum Masters only work with the team. Yeah? As you know, Sunan, we've always designed the Scrum Master role to be what we call a servant leader, not just for the team, but also for the organization. Yeah. So for relationships within the team, relationships in the organization, but certainly relationships between the team and the organization. So that is a huge challenge indeed. Yeah. So we need, in that sense, more courageous Scrum Masters that are willing to step up, stretch, and try to take it to the next step.
Yeah, and I think one of the reason might be the next question which I'm going to ask you, that why that Scrum Master don't have that much courage. So the next question is that, in your opinion, we have seen that in just like 2 days Scrum Master training, right? People claim themselves to be a Scrum Master. So many believe that by doing this quick training, they will become a Scrum Master, and they will definitely going to earn some good money and great job, due to which more and more people are coming, newcomers are coming to this field. So what are your thoughts on this perception and its impact? I think this is one of the reason also, as you just mentioned. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a few downsides of what's been happening, and at least what I've seen happening in my 20 years of Scrum. So what happened a long time ago after the Agile Manifesto?
Sorry, Gunther, before you mention, so friends, we are not here to disrespect any of those big organization or certification companies out there. It's just our personal perception. It's happening. So sorry, Gunther, please go ahead.
No, that's fine. It's good. It's good to bring out that message. So it's not, nothing of what you say is about bashing, judging, blaming, whatever. It's about learning in order to look forward and potentially improve, which is at the heart of everything we do, by the way, right? Reflecting so that we can inspect and adapt.
True.
So one of the downsides of, let's say, sort of by accident, my first 10 years of Scrum, meaning starting in 2003, at that point of time, there was the CSM class, and then attached to that, the CSM certificate. Now, we all know that in those years, you could just attend the class and you would get your certificate. Now, the certificate, so calling yourself a certified Scrum Master, only in that sense, only means that I've been in a class, I've learned about Scrum, I've learned about some things that are important in Scrum, how as Scrum people we look at the world. It was never intended to say, I'm a fully experienced whatever Scrum Master. It says, by that time it said, I have attended a class about Scrum, and I hope that has brought me some important insight. Scrum always been the case, and it will never change. You can only learn Scrum by going out there and play the game. That has never been a thing. Now, the downside of that approach, attending a class and being able to call yourself certified, has been indeed a lack of credibility. And that means, let's be honest, that is not the most credible approach. Now, the upside of it is the enormous attraction that people created for Scrum by doing that. Because in that sense, I understand we all bash this idea of certification and so on. But let's be honest, as often IT people, software people, we are also very hungry for certificates. We like to show off with all those certificates on our LinkedIn and personal profiles and so ever. So I know, was it nasty for some people to sort of build on that desire for certificates? Maybe it was. So the good side, the growth of Scrum, the downside, in a way, credibility. Now, nowadays, certainly the two large organizations promoting Scrum worldwide, meaning Scrum.org and the Scrum Alliance, they both have, I think, assessments in place. Let's call them exams. At Scrum the Talk, as your people know, I'm very close to whatever happens at Scrum the Talk. At Scrum the Talk, we also call them assessments. In a way, ways to assess your insights into Scrum. And when Scrum the Talk was established, which was by the end of 2009, there was a clear choice made to separate classes from assessments. Yeah? So that means you could go to an assessment without attending a class. I think that is a fair thing to do. And the certificate you would get from that point on would be that I have passed an assessment with a certain score. In our case, it is 85%. In that sense, a certification means I have demonstrated in an assessment that I have a certain level of knowledge and insights into Scrum, into the role of the Scrum Master and so on. So in that sense, it hasn't really changed. And I think a lot of people out there are using the idea of certification against us and ignoring what we're trying to achieve with it. So what we're trying to achieve with it is give people a tool, a way to assess their knowledge. And if it passes a certain level in the score, we give them a certificate, which in a way just shows I have demonstrated a certain level of insights and knowledge about Scrum. Was it intended to say, oh, I'm now the best Scrum Master in the world? Of course not. Will some people use it for that? Probably. Will other people bash other people for doing that? Probably. Is all of that helpful? Not really. But it doesn't mean that certification in itself, by default, is bad. It's how you use it. Do you see it as a tool or not?
Great. I think that's really a great perspective, Gunther. Thanks for sharing that. It's up to us how we are going to use that certification. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
The next question is again somewhere with respect to the AI advancement. So in light of AI advancement, right, there is a growing concerns about the future of careers such as Scrum Master or Agile Coach or let's say product owner or a business analyst. So how do you perceive the impact of these changes on these roles in future?
Yeah, well, let's start by looking at nowadays. So we're almost at the end of 2023, and I'm not too worried. I must say I haven't looked into it very deeply, AI, which is nowadays mostly sort of reduced to ChatGPT, which is a very smart and intelligent language engine that collects information from around the globe and the internet. And then puts it in a highly readable format, which you might think would be written by a human being. So we're very far away from being able to write intelligent, creative code and work together. So that what I call humanizing the workplace is much against the idea of considering people as resources, right? People are people, not resources. People are not replaceable pieces of machinery, as we say. Now that is building on, let's say, a metaphor that reflects that industrial thinking, machine, pieces of machinery, cogs in a machine, and so on. Now, I don't know, maybe in the future, I will have to rephrase that into people are people, that's still the same, not resources in that sense, maybe not AI agents or AI robots. Just to say that human impact, that our cognitive impact on working creatively together with people, collaborating, building great products and so on, I think AI will be helpful in that, but I don't think AI will take over from us.
True. I think we both can work hand in hand. Of course,
Yeah,
we can treat it like as a tool, and then we can leverage that tool and for the best interest of everyone, I think.
Yeah, I've recently read a statement that I really liked. Somebody, I think it was something like, AI will not replace people. AI will replace people that don't use AI.
True.
And that was a funny thing. So I've also been checking in with a lot of developers recently. Hey, do you use like things like AI or ChatGPT for your code and so on? And they say, yes, we use it because it's faster and so on, and it gives us good suggestions. But I always have to look at what AI or ChatGPT, whatever solutions, suggest to me. Because it's not because they suggested that it's correct. And it's often even plainly wrong. But it is easier, and it's got lots of good stuff and good suggestions in it. But we will always have to keep using our brain. I don't think anything will replace our human brain. Certainly not in a short while. No.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Guntur, for that. Okay, so friends, before we continue, make sure that you will hit that like button and consider sharing this session with your LinkedIn connections and other Scrum Master friends. Let's spread this knowledge. So, with this, Guntur, let me ask you next question. Now, this question is with respect to a lot of trainers who are into this industry, agile coaches and a lot of different trainers. So, what do you think will happen to agile training and development in future? And what do you suggest for getting ready for it? For example, someone really want to come into this field as a trainer or someone, right? So
Yeah.
do you think that this training industry will continue to do well in future, or there will be some slowdown because more people are becoming self-proclaimed agile experts, or they are relying on AI for learning? Nowadays lot of online courses and lot of things are available
Yeah.
nowadays. So what do you think about over here on the training part?
Yeah, well, you've read my book, so that's great. So in my book, also refer to the what I call what is the technology adoption life cycle. So just let's build up quickly an image about such an adoption life cycle, whether it's technology or not. So in the early beginning, you've got pioneers really going for it and being new in it and really looking into things and innovating and so on. And then it becomes bigger and it grows and so on. And at some point of time, it sort of goes away again. Now, I think in the way that Agile and Scrum is being spread right now, there will be a time where the things will start slowing down because at least sort of the audience that you will still be reaching with those older ideas, let's call them like that, will be sort of the laggards, the people at sort of the end of the tail or the end of the wave. What I would like to see currently with what I call moving your Scrum downfield is people sort of starting a new cycle, being pioneers in expressing Scrum differently with more nuance, more depth in it, and getting more out of it. So and that is what I'm looking for, pioneers. And there will be still that sort of massive adoption of Scrum will still be there. I think what we will need for the future of Scrum is pioneers getting up and challenging things. So like once upon a time, we had sort of massive spread of waterfall thinking, and some amazingly courageous people stood up and brought an alternative. So it's not the same big change or big shift that we look for, but still people that have the courage to stand up and pioneer and express, cool, great that you're all doing Scrum, but we can do better than this. And here's a way to do that. And for me, if I can just expand on that a little bit, so that is one of the things that I feel we've been avoiding too much, or organizations have been avoiding, is sort of rethinking the organization around Scrum. This idea we're going to use Scrum and it's only for the teams, as if you can properly adopt Scrum without having an impact on how you deal with people, HR, how you deal with governance, how you deal with quality, how you deal with funding of things and budgeting and reporting and so on. So establishing Scrum within existing sort of industrial structures, that is something we need to get over. That is something we need to get across. And that is, I think, going to be essential for the future of Scrum. So rethinking the organizational structures around Scrum.
Yeah, I think that's something really wonderful. That's a great point, Contour. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. And now these questions is with respect to your experience. We talked about a lot of things which are there outside, but then people are also want to know that with respect to your experience. So, for example, could you provide any example of a situation where a team or organization they continuously adapted and improve its agile processes over the period of time?
Yeah.
Maybe that will going to help them in increase their efficiency and satisfaction. So, if you know some of these organization or something like that, which you really want to share with us, so
Yeah.
that will be really wonderful.
Yeah, I want to build a little bit on my two last experiences of doing coaching consulting with two organizations. One of them sort of ended at the beginning of the Corona crisis. And I had been working for them with, I don't know, 1 year and a half, 2 years. And in a way, it was a large organization, it was an insurance organization. I spent a lot of energy on it. And I was disappointed for myself about the lack of substantial change that I had been able to induce or introduce in that company. So that left me with a sense of disappointment for myself. I had done great work with a number of teams. I had seen teams really grow and become better and become more autonomous, more self-organizing, finding the more motivation again to come to the workplace. In a way, what was sad, most of them plummeted again. They went down again because management, PMOs, other people, whatever, really important people kept interfering with the team. So it means I haven't been able to really help people get this idea of manage a team from the outset and not interfere within the team. So I was sort of disappointed. And then this year, so 2023, I started working with another organization, again in Netherlands, a very different sector, where they asked me to come help them to sort of what they called for at that point of time to introduce their Scrum 2.0, because they had been doing Scrum for a while and they felt like we're getting stuck and want to improve and want some external help for that. And then the funny thing is when I started working with them and introducing Scrum again, they also quickly realized that it wasn't Scrum 2.0 that we were trying to introduce, but actually Scrum 1.0, because they realized what we have been calling Scrum
It's not even a Scrum.
It's not even close to Scrum. And I've been working with them now for several months, and it's amazing how they're flying, they're going off. And that again reinforced the idea that Scrum is really great for certain companies that want it, that want to go for it, but it's also more like helpful if it's more like a sort of greenfield organization where you introduce Scrum to add a little bit of structures to what they're doing. Where at that large company that I've worked with, you're trying to introduce Scrum to reduce the amount of structure. Yeah? And that seems to be a lot more difficult. And I was even talking to a good friend of mine who works at Microsoft in a high position, is also working with Scrum and Agile, and he just, I know, it's like, I think sometimes it's impossible for those big organizations with all that legacy in their thinking to get them to accept and acknowledge and go for Scrum, because they have so much structure and you want to reduce it. But in that company that I'm working now, it was more like a sort of very chaotic approach with lots of individual developers, and we're introducing Scrum to add a little bit of structure. And that is really flying, that is taking off incredibly. So what I've tried to do with large organizations, and that's again tied into that moving your Scrum downfield, I came up with an idea, was it back in 2017, by the way, already, what I called reimagining your Scrum. Those large organizations are still stuck in that industrial mindset. So they introduce Scrum also in the industrial way, meaning following a cookbook, preset instructions, copy-pasting what other organizations are doing. All teams have to adopt the same practices in exact the same way, almost overnight. They all build on existing blueprints or models that they want to introduce, and that is not helping. So what I've tried to do with large organizations is let's reimagine your Scrum, but let's do that one product or one service at a time, not for all teams overnight. No, let's have a look at what you've done with Scrum and let's pick one part of it. Let's look at the service, the product that they're actually trying to build and try to evolve and try to update and change and as well. And let's rethink Scrum in that part of the organization. That's what I call reimagining your Scrum, starting by knowing your product and then rethinking, resetting, rebooting how you do Scrum for that product, meaning with a real product owner, a dedicated Scrum Master, and dedicated teams of developers, and then see where we get. And once we get that part flowing, maybe then we can add another part. And then you introduce iterative incremental principles into that change process. And then I believe that you can sort of gradually introduce agile thinking and gradually replace the old thinking with, let's say, the new thinking. But you can't just do that overnight. That is impossible. They've got a history, they've got sort of legacy, which is not just in the IT system, but also in their minds. And that takes time. So change comes in increments too. So
Absolutely.
that is what I believe in, how we can approach it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Guntur. So, Guntur, I really don't want to stop this session, but I think we are running out of time. So I have to conclude this fantastic session. So a big thanks to you, Guntur, for sharing this valuable insight. And friends, it's your turn now. If you find this helpful, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment to let us know your thought on this session. And your feedback shapes our future content. So please do that. And thank you for being part of our community. Stay tuned for more insights. Thank you. Thanks, Guntur, one more time.
Thank you, Sunand, for having me. It was a pleasure. I hope your viewers and listeners will like it.
Definitely. And I'm sure like you have to promise us that this has to be your first but not last session on our channel. So I will keep on
Okay,
approaching
cool.
you for future sessions as well. So thank you one more time, Guntur. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.